They are going to do everything in their power to try to ruin our favorite sport. I'm Pete Mundo. Heartland College Sports is where you find us covering the Big 12. And we're glad you're here, as always, as a part of the show. I don't want to be a negative Nancy. I don't. I mean, if you're in the Midwest this week, you're getting pounded with snow. You've got minus 40 wind chills. You don't need me bringing you down. But I don't have a choice. I don't. I couldn't believe the report from Ross Dellinger that came out this week, Yahoo Sports, where he said right now the goal and the plan for the SEC and the Big Ten is to expand the college football playoff to 14 or 16 teams and give each of those conferences 4 automatic bids. You have got to be bleeping kidding me with that idea. What are we going to have? 5-loss SEC teams in the college football playoff with their 8-game joke of a conference schedule, which includes that, FCS cupcake game in mid-November? This is ruining our favorite sport, your favorite sport, my favorite sport. They're trying to destroy it. And it's all driven by greed of those two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. The SEC, I guess, was upset they only got, 3 bids in the college football playoff for the first time in the 12-form iteration of the format. 3 wasn't enough. They spent all this time crying, Lane Kiffin, Shane Beamer, all these people crying about how they didn't get into the playoff. Oh, we should have been in over SMU. These games wouldn't have been blowouts. There are blowouts in the NFL playoffs. The wild card weekend stunk. Spare me all of that, please. I'm not interested. And now Ross Dellinger reports here in the last couple of days that this is what these two conferences want. And basically, if they want it, they may ultimately get it. Expansion to a 14 or 16 team field, multiple automatic qualifiers per league. The SEC would get 4. The Big 10 would get 4. The Big 12 would get 2. The ACC would get 2. The group of 5 would get 1. And then there would be 1 at large. That would be if you had a 14-team playoff. In a 16-team playoff, you would get 3 at-larges. So, heck, you could have the SEC getting 7 teams in. I mean, I'm being a little sarcastic there. But if they get all the at-large bids, you'll have 7 SEC teams in here. If that's what they want to create, if I'm Brett Yormark, I would be tempted to say, break off. Now, I know before you sit there, whoa, we can't do that. We cannot allow these teams to potentially break off and do their own mini NFL thing. Listen, I've often believed, and I do right now, that when it comes to college football, these conferences need each other more than any of them realize right now. They do. They need each other for parity. They need each other for competition. They need each other because what's good for the sport means the success of these Power 4 conferences, and I would even include the group of 5 in that. If you just create an NFL light, a mini NFL, a minor league NFL, whatever you want to call it, with the SEC and maybe the Big Ten, that will be hyper-regional. College football will lose a lot of the allure that draws the casual fan to it, and it just will not bode well for the future of this sport unless you want to go NFL light. If that's all you're interested in, chasing dollars and building an NFL minor league for 20, 30 teams on a Saturday, I suppose that this will be the thing for you. But if you're a longtime college football fan, and I sit here in my mid-30s, so it's not like I'm 65 saying this, but if you're a longtime college football fan, that's not what makes this sport great. That's not what is appealing to the masses about this sport. Now, it might be appealing to the TV networks. It might be appealing to the people who are trying to make money off the sport, right? But in terms of drawing more people into it. Tell me how this accomplishes that. Because you need people engaged in Stillwater, Oklahoma. You need people engaged in Lubbock, Texas. You need people engaged in Ames, Iowa. And if this is going to be the SEC Big Ten Invitational, and, we'll let a couple of your cute little teams in there. Yeah, we'll give you guys a couple just to make you feel good about yourselves. All this does is double down on the same old nonsense. And it allows the SEC and the Big Ten to continue to strengthen themselves. That's what it accomplishes. And the Big 12 and the ACC are supposed to be basically sitting there saying, yes, sir, may I have another? And then basically just go along for the ride because they should be lucky that they're there. I'm not saying that. That's the attitude right now out of the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, this is something, by the way, if you're just joining us, whether it's on the radio show, we're glad that you're here. Always love our radio affiliates. If you're on YouTube, hit that thumbs up right now on the video. It helps us tremendously. And same thing on the podcast. Drop us that 5-star rating and review. Glad you're here and glad you're a part of the show. So this was from Robert Griffin III. I'm not a huge RG3 guy, but I'll give him credit for a good post he put on X this week. Here it is. Robert Griffin III. The soul of college football is dying because of money. Allowing the Big Ten and the SEC to get 4 automatic bids into another expanded college football playoff dilutes the importance of winning. 4-loss non-conference champions don't belong in the college football playoff. The proposed changes open the door for a monopoly of the sport. The business of college football is trying to destroy it. Yeah. He's absolutely right. And guess what the SEC is doing in return? The SEC is willing to go to a 9-game conference schedule if they can get this 4 auto bid 14 or 16 team playoff. This is insane. Why play the regular season games? Why not just have some, bogus AP poll that gets put up in August and call it a day? And just get right to the playoff. Why bother with games? If we're talking about 4 auto bids for a conference, what we should do, what would actually be somewhat interesting, and I'm thinking about this on the fly. First off, we got to have an equal number of conference games across the Power 4. If you want to lower that number and do more out of conference, that might actually be compelling to then actually try to get a sense of who the best teams are in the country and do it that way. And if you want to have a couple of auto bids per conference, that's fine. Whether it's 1, 2, or whatever you want to make it, however you want to go about doing it. But that would actually be an interesting way around the entire thing. Now, that's never going to happen because right now the only goal for the SEC and the Big Ten is to basically double down on their superiority, perceived superiority at least. Remember, the SEC hasn't made the national championship the last 2 years. Big Ten has been the dominant conference in college football. But this is like the NFL, and I know it's not a perfect analogy because you don't have the amount of cross competition in college football that you have in the NFL. I understand that. But this is like the AFC West with the Chiefs, who also have, the Broncos and the Chargers. 3 teams in that division made the NFL playoffs. Or the NFC East, where you have the Super Bowl champion Eagles and the Washington Commanders. I almost said Redskins, but I didn't do it. Whoops. Did I just say Redskins? Anyway, you have them basically saying to the NFC and the AFC, we're the best division. We're going to call the shots. We're going to get 2 or 3 teams out of the NFC East every year. Same thing with the AFC West. And you guys can fight for the scraps. Because, there's not a perfect way to figure out who the best teams are. I know we have these silly divisions, but they're not equal. Some years your division might be a little better, but we're the dominant divisions right now. So this is how this is going to play out. I get it's not perfect. But you know what else they would do? If they were to rig the NFL like they're rigging college football, they'd also say our salary cap in the AFC West and NFC East is going to be higher. And on top of that, what's going to work even better? We're also going to get the top picks in the NFL draft. That's the analogous comparison that you can make between the NFL and college football right now. And it is absolutely absurd. And all it does, if that happened in the NFL, what would happen? The AFC West and the NFC East would get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then those same divisions would sit there and say, why can't you guys compete with us? I guess we need even more when it comes to automatic qualifiers in the NFL playoffs. Boy, you guys are falling behind. What's going on back there? You've rigged the game. That's what you've done. And that's what the SEC is blatantly trying to do. If you're watching on YouTube, you've got you're watching me in the Heartland College Sports hoodie, which is linked right now in the bio or in the description. It is 22% off. Size up. Get yourself one of these great hoodies. And we have got much more merch on the merch shop, which once again, that link is in the bio, and we hope that you'll check it out. A great way to support the show. And we've got some fun stuff coming your way on that front. 22% off right now for all of our merch. Big 12 administrators are not happy about this. All right. And they shouldn't be happy about this. According to Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, several Big 12 and ACC administrators are not in support of a format with so many automatic bids going to the SEC and the Big 10. Call their bluff. Do it. Call their bluff and call it right now. Now, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark told Ross Dellinger he's been exploring predictive analysis on what different playoff models would mean for conference participation if applied to recent playoff formats, saying that he'll be armed with data. Well, that's great, and I trust Brett Yormark, but this is not about hypotheticals. This is about what is in the best interest of the sport right now and the future of the sport right now. And right now, what you're seeing is a rigging by the powers that be, including ESPN, to set this thing up for the SEC to grow, the SEC continuing to be the biggest, baddest on the block, and then the Big 12, the ACC, will eventually get left behind. But it will be a slow death. That's what they're doing here. They're making it so that it's a slow, slow death for these conferences. And then when they die, after ultimately putting the final nail in the coffin, they'll look down and say, what happened to you? Why'd you do this to yourself? When they were the ones digging the grave all along. That's what's going on in the world of college football, and do not let anybody else tell you otherwise. And the brazenness to go straight to 4 automatic bids, not even saying, hey, we'll each get 3, you each get 2. They went right to 4, man. They went to double the Big 12 and the ACC. That's what they did. It is insane. And there's something to be said for the audacity of these two conferences to take that approach. I can't say I'm shocked, but even I'm a little surprised that they were that bold with this move, or they're being that bold with this move from Dellinger. The ACC commissioner recently told Yahoo that he's not set up on how he thinks the format should look, but, quote, there needs to be fairness and access to the championship. It needs to be a true championship, not artificial and not an invitational. Well, I don't know how you're going to get around that, but it would be nice if Brett Yormark had a little ally here. That's what Brett Yormark needs. Brett Yormark needs to lead this thing against the SEC and the Big Ten, and he's got to have numbers on his side. That means the ACC commissioner. That means the entire group of 5. And you can scoff at that if you're an SEC fan. You can say the group of 5 doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Listen, they're part of the fabric of college football. And maybe they don't make the most money. I understand that. I totally get it. But right now, the best thing the Big 12 can do is have strength in numbers. And that's what they've got to take advantage of right now, today. And Yormark can lead the way. Richard says, as of now, the Big 12 and the ACC will only get 1 team in, so you might as well take it. I'm not going to take it. I'm not. Because there are years right now that, at least in the current 12-team format, the Big 12 could get a couple of teams in, and the SEC might get 2, maybe 3. I suppose they could get more than that. But with Notre Dame playing really good, you know that Notre Dame's going to be in there. They don't have to play in a conference championship game. You know you're going to have a group of 5. You know you're going to have the 4 conference champions. And the Big Ten is the better conference right now. You can't tell me that just because they're the SEC, they're worth giving 4 automatic bids to. On principle, I can't get behind that. And maybe that means it costs the Big 12 a bid once in a while. I don't care. And here's the other thing for the SEC. They may rue the day that they wanted 4 automatic bids and they destroy their own regular season. That has a lot of juice to it. We're losing juice by the year for the regular season in college football. I mean, listen, you might say, no, November was great. We had like 20 some odd teams with hopes of making the playoffs. And I understand that sentiment. But going beyond 12 does nothing. 8's probably the number. You could get me to 10. 12's probably too much. 14, 16 is way too many. You can still have an exciting November without expanding this thing to 16 teams. All right? You can. So don't just sell me on these November numbers. But the question is, how much do you risk hurting your regular season when you do this? You think about, and I'm not saying we got to go back to the BCS model here where, 99% of teams are out of it by mid-October. But there's something to be said for the importance of the regular season in college football that these other sports do not possess. Nobody's watching the NBA. There's a multitude of reasons for that, but the NBA is a dead product. They are screwed. It was their All-Star game weekend last weekend. No one cared. Nobody watched it, and nobody's watching that product. Major League Baseball has problems with the regular. Well, baseball has problems all over the place, but their regular season is way too long. The best thing football has going for it is that you can really only play it once a week, so that the people that want to make as much money as possible, they've got to be somewhat constrained because of the physical limitations on players who are playing the sport. So that has actually saved them in many respects. But if you are going to dilute the regular season to the point where we're looking at 5, 6, 7 SEC teams getting in, that will hurt the product in September, October, and potentially November. It will. And I don't care what anybody says about, well, we're going to have half the league fighting for a playoff spot. Okay, but suddenly those games that had to be must-watch that, you couldn't miss the wedding for, but you had in your pocket on your phone, all these different games that it was like, don't miss, your niece's communion. Don't be doing that for the Auburn-Alabama game or, the Auburn-Florida game or whatever it might be. Well, now it's like, I'll just miss it because whatever. We're trying to get 7 teams into the playoff from the SEC or something crazy like that, so why not? Right? That's the problem. It's a fine line to walk. And you've seen more often than not, you've seen sports leagues fail because time and time again, they get a little too greedy. And that's where college football has to get itself in line. I am all about capitalism. I am all about making as much money as you possibly can. But if it's at the expense of the fan and it's at the expense of the sport, then ultimately you could end up losing money in the long run if this sport gets hyper-regional, if people are not watching the regular season at the same pace that they were in prior years, and if these playoff games end up being total and utter busts because you keep expanding and expanding and expanding to the point where the games are completely uncompetitive. And that is my fear right now for college football. They have got to be very careful with this, and the Big 12, led by Brett Yormark, has got to lead the way and say enough is enough. We're pushing back, and here's how we're doing it. It's all about strength in numbers. I'm Pete Mundo. Glad you're here on Heartland College Sports. Would really appreciate it if you would drop us a rating and a review on the podcast, and also subscribe on the YouTube channel. I know you might think you are, but you may not be. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being here as a part of the show. And we hope you have a great week. Stay warm if you are in the Midwest. We will have more content for you this week right here on heartlandcollegesports.com, and join the Heartland College Sports Forums. They are free. Just go to heartlandcollegesports.com, click on the forum tab, and we will see you over there. Have a great day, and go Big 12.